Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. Welcome to today's webinar, Coping with Change, presented by Jennifer and Alan from our TARP training partners. We can go to the next slide. Today, we do have live captioning available for this event. Live captioning is viewable in the multimedia view, which should be showing up on your screen now. On the bottom right is where it pops up for me. There may be a little blue button, except that it's basically saying, hey, somebody's trying to share something, it's safe. But you can change the size and style of the font to suit your needs. And if you cannot see the multimedia viewer, please go to View, Panels, Manage Panels, and Add Multimedia Viewer Panel. Blake will be sharing a link to a live document. If for some reason the multimedia viewer is not working for you, you can use that URL to see the live typing document. Thank you very much. Very quickly also, to access audio, some of you may be on and you just see my lips moving. To access audio for this meeting, you may have to dial in if you didn't join with computer audio. The phone number and access code are located on your screen right now. We'll leave that up for just a moment. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. I did share the link to the live captioning document if you do need access to that in the chat feature. Good morning, good afternoon, actually, excuse me. I'm Blake Cush. I'm the Director of Training and Outreach at OVS, and welcome to our VAP Training Center webinar, Coping with Change. Since last April, we've hosted a series of webinars. I promise this isn't our first time. And we've helped to tackle some of the unique challenges and pressing issues you may have had over these last few months. On your screen, you'll see some additional webinar and small group training opportunities that are coming up. We encourage you to visit the OVS VAP Training Center webpage. We'll share a link shortly in just a second. And you can learn more there and actually click to register on some of those opportunities. Every webinar in previous series, including today's, are recorded, and then links are made available on that same webpage. And they're also hyperlinked on our OVS YouTube training channel. So please check out some of the previous content that we've shared with you guys as well. Finally, as soon as you exit today's webinar, you'll be directed to an evaluation survey on the presentation. Please take a couple minutes to give us your feedback. We appreciate it. This really is used in future training offerings and helping to improve and foster them. Today's webinar will be, as Rachel just mentioned, led by Jennifer Amstutz of JA Strategies and Alan Krieger of Krieger Solutions. Jenny and Alan have more than 40 years of combined experience in consulting and training, working with nonprofits and agencies around the state of New York. Both have also served as executive directors of nonprofit organizations, and both have master's degrees in management. Without further ado, I'd like to formally welcome Jenny and Alan.
Okay, thanks, Blake. Now go back one, Nicole. Yeah, so on the slide there are some of the upcoming programs we have. Our program is coming to an end as of September 30th, but we have one more webinar scheduled so far on understanding and resolving conflicts, and the registration information is on the OVS page. And then we have some open enrollment programs, which are just open to anybody on a limited basis. They're all filling up, but we have 3 on managing stress and 3 on managing performance accountability and feedback. And we'll be announcing a few more in the next week or so. So check your email. If you don't receive this email from OVS or us, our email address is at the end of the program here. You'll see it on the screen. It's on the handouts. And you can email us and we'll send it to you. And maybe, Nicole, you can pop my email in the chat and people can copy that if they need to. Okay, now we'll go on to the next slide. So I want to take a minute and orient you to the screen if you haven't used WebEx before. Unfortunately, WebEx has updated, so it may be a little different on your screen. But if you move your mouse around on the bottom, you should see a menu pop up. And either, if it looks something like what you see there in the middle, there's something with a little bubble in it. That's the chat box. Today on mine, it was over to the right. But somewhere on the bottom, there should be an icon with a bubble inside that if you click on it, will open your chat box. And then if you open the chat box, it lets you choose who you're chatting to. And if you could select all panelists, that way we'll be sure to see it. So please, when you chat to all panelists and we'll be able to see it. Again, feel free to chat in questions at any time. We'll call for them at certain times, but you can chat them in any time, and any comments you have, feel free to chat in as well. So there'll be certain times we ask you to chat in, but we'll be monitoring it throughout the whole program. We may save some of the questions for the end, and we will have time at the end for open questions and answers, again, via the chat box. There'll also be a couple of polls today. We'll open it. You don't have to worry about it. A poll will pop up on the right-hand side of your screen. You'll be able to click your answers, and then we'll share the findings. And the link for the webinar is being shared in your webinar chat, and you should be able to click on it and open the file if you'd like. This is slides, sorry, the PDF slides for the webinar. So if you'd like to look along on your own, you can have that. Okay, in today's session, we're going to explore how you approach change, your attitude towards change, and the impact change has on you. We'll take a close look at the physical impact of stress that is often the result of dealing with change. We'll also look at the stages of the change process and how to best navigate each of them. And to help you manage future changes, we'll review some ideas for building change resilience. And finally, we'll look at some ways to work more collaboratively with your colleagues to facilitate changes at work. So change is inevitable, except from a vending machine. That's a quote by Robert Gallagher. The first part can kind of make people wince. Change seems to happen on and on, but hopefully the second part softens it with some humor. Humor is one of the keys to successfully surviving constant change. There are two kinds of change we're going to talk about today. Change we initiate for ourselves, such as New Year's resolutions, and change that is imposed on us from the outside, such as changes in the workplace and our personal life due to the pandemic, the economy, and other outside forces. Let's start with change you initiate for yourself. How many of you had made New Year's resolutions to do something differently this year? Anyone want to share your resolutions? Feel free to chat them in to all panelists. Mine were to exercise more and spend more time relaxing with my family and friends. It's been 5 months since New Year's. How many of you had great success with your resolution? I didn't, but the year's not up. There's always hope. Change is difficult. We all become set in our ways and get comfortable with that, even when we know it's not the best action to take. We often put our head down and persist. Let's take a look at what gets in the way of successful change. Some barriers include your personal attitude about change. Some people welcome change as an opportunity to take on a new challenge or learn new skills. Others find change stressful, worrisome, and unpleasant. If you believe it can be done, it often will. If you believe it can't, it won't. Closely related to that is fear of the unknown. There is security in what we already know, even if we don't especially love it. The devil you know is safer than the one you don't. Humor can help this along with stepping back to gain some perspective. One helpful quote in dealing with the fear of change is, "Don't worry about the world coming to an end today. It's already tomorrow in Australia." That's Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts. Having other demands and stresses in your life drains your energy and can distract you from focusing on a desired change. The past year of the pandemic has been especially draining, making it difficult for anyone to marshal their energy to take on any kind of self-directed change. There have been tons of outside-directed changes we've needed to make, leaving little energy for voluntary change. After being under stress with many work and life challenges, we just don't have the energy to focus on deep change. Along that line lies inertia. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. Once we're on a path, we tend to stay on that path. It takes conscious and continued effort to shift off the paths we're used to. Habits are mental shortcuts. Our brain rewires itself to follow habitual paths instead of having to think it through each time. So to create a new habit, we have to unwire the old one and rewire a new mental pathway. It takes constant and ongoing effort to write in the new circuits. Giving up too soon is another barrier to change. Many people who make a New Year's resolution give up in the same breath they make the resolution, knowing how hard change is and noting their failures in the past to change. Many others give up in the first few weeks. Gyms have a great rush of membership in January, maybe not this year, but typically, and then they're empty shortly thereafter. Many of us are hardwired with negative internal messages that tell us change is too hard and we won't succeed. It's important to counter them with positive affirmations. Make statements to yourself about how great it'll be to get to your goal. Make statements about the skills and capabilities you bring to the project. Remind yourself of your motivation and your capabilities. Think and express confidence, and your odds of success go way up. Be on the lookout for any other obstacles you encounter. Note them and make a plan to address them. Persist. Keep working at it. We have some strategies to help with this that we'll get to in just a few minutes. But before we do, we'd like you to take a short poll to see which barriers are most intense for you. Please select the top 1 or 2 barriers that stop you from fully embracing change that you voluntarily choose to take on, such as New Year's resolutions. If there are other significant barriers for you, please share them in the chat box. Chat to all presenters. Your comments will be shared anonymously. Rachel will open the poll and you'll have 60 seconds to make your selection. Okay, so you should see the poll over to the right. And try to choose just 1 or 2 that are your biggest barriers for you, for changes that you would like to do, changes you choose yourself.
And just a reminder for those who are typing in some things, make sure you select all panelists or else only I can see it and I might miss it.
And when you've made your selection, make sure you hit submit. Okay, so somebody added in fear of the unknown as an additional. Energy, so lack of energy. Yeah, it's been an exhausting year. Okay, so the poll's over. Let's see what the results are. It takes a few seconds to other demands and stress, someone said. Other people's negative opinions in response. Okay, and there are the results. So other demands and stress, kind of not surprising the year we've had. Quite a few people selected that one. That was our biggest one. And fear was a kind of second place there. And negative internal messages probably was about third. So we'll try to keep all that in mind as we go along. I want to jot them down. Okay, you can stop sharing the results there, Rachel. So if it's not clear, there's a little X, you can X to get out of the poll and get back to the slides. Okay, so other demands and stress, fear of the unknown and negative internal messages were the top choices. So we hope today we'll give you some tools for each of those. We'll try to keep them in mind as we do our presentation. And we want to start with looking at stress, one of the kind of the highest one that you selected. So when people are under stress, your body produces adrenaline, which increases your heart rate, your blood pressure, and your muscle strength. So it has some advantages. Your body's preparing to fight or flee. But at work, neither is appropriate. So you feel stressed. You're all wound up with nowhere to go. We all know that higher blood pressure is certainly not something we're striving for. Tense muscles also can lead to backaches, headaches, clenched jaws, and upset stomachs. Adrenaline also reduces your mental functioning, your creativity, and your problem solving. This is really important. Your energy is directed to your muscles, and your primitive part of your brain takes over because you want to react. You don't want to think. If you have to stop and think about a threat, it's too late. So you move into a quick reaction mode and you lose your ability to come up with good problem solving. It also suppresses your immune system. Again, diverting energy to your muscles and chronic stress can lead to a wide range of illnesses, including heart disease, depression, obesity, and cancer. So stress is really not our friend here, and it's something that we've all lived with for about a year. Stress can interfere with sleep, and then exhaustion in turn leads to more stress. And stress causes us to feel overwhelmed, and we procrastinate and put things off, and this often leads to burnout. It can also lead to arguments and anger as we overreact to the slightest comment. And anger is a common feeling resulting from change that is poorly managed. Mark Twain once wrote, "Anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it's stored than to anything in which it's poured." Right? So short bursts of strength can be positive, can help you focus and encourage what you need to get done. A deadline sometimes gets us kind of up and moving, but long-term persistent stress is damaging and debilitating. The changes we've all experienced the past year have produced vast amounts of stress. We felt the stress of illness, fear of COVID, isolation, loss of family and friends, the costs of the pandemic. Positive changes as well as negative changes can lead to stress. Ask anyone who's had a baby or gotten married, even before the pandemic. These were welcome, wonderful changes and are also extremely stressful and draining. I'm sure many of you have children. It was great to have a new baby, but it wasn't so great to lose sleep and to have to deal with diapers. And then the kids grow up to be teenagers, which is not always a very positive change. But overall, having kids brings a great added dimension to our lives. It's the same with change at work. We get used to one way of doing things, and then something shifts, and we have to adapt to that. So changes of any kind are stressful, and we generally try to avoid stress and therefore avoid change. Jen's going to pick up from here.
All right, thanks, Alan. Well, first, before we move on from stress, I just want to put a plug in. We do have a managing stress workshop coming up in a few weeks. So if you are really feeling stressed, make sure you sign up for that. But yeah, so change is the only constant. Change is inevitable. Alan gave us that quote before. It's really a quote. Those quotes really just make me kind of tense up, but they certainly prove to be true, right? Another way to look at it is if you're in a bad situation, don't worry, it'll change. We live in a world of rapid change. So some of us take to it really well, but for others of us, it can cause us to be very stressed out. So we're going to take another very quick poll. And I want you to just get a sense of how many people out here look forward to change. So if you think change is the thing, it's fun, it's exciting, it makes life interesting. And then how many of you feel like you've had more than enough change to last you for enough time, for last you a lifetime? You'd like a little more consistency. The lack of change is a change that you can move for. So I want you to give me one. Which camp are you in? Change is fun, or no more change? Rachel, you can open the poll. We're just going to give you a very quick 30 seconds to answer this poll. So choose your choice, make your choice, and we'll close it up. All right. So we're waiting for the poll to. And we did get one person that chatted in that said, "I like change as long as it doesn't involve huge changes like a loss of a loved one." So that's another good point, that we didn't give you kind of that third choice, which is some change is good, but sometimes major changes can be devastating. So there is an in between there as well. But now if we look at the results, we're almost pretty close to 50-50 on the way people answered. About half of us out there really look forward to change, thinks it keeps things fresh. The other half of us have had more than enough change in our life. So as we go through this, the rest of the webinar, think about the camp that you're in, how you feel about change, and then listen a little to what we're saying for those people who maybe are not embracing change in the same way. So somebody else just chatted in, I embrace change if it means growing. So for some of us, that's the way we feel, like change is something that we embrace, but for others it can be really stressful. But regardless of whether or not you do embrace change or love change, at some point we all come to a point where we do initiate some sort of change. It may be a big change like a new job or a new house, or maybe a small change like the New Year's resolutions that Alan was talking about. But there are a number of things that you can do to increase the odds of success in accomplishing a desired change. Nicole, you can switch to the next slide. Thanks. There are 4 key elements to consider when taking on a change. These will help that change be successful. Those key elements are a vision, a plan, a support system, and an accountability mechanism. You first need to have a vision of where you want to go. It has to be clear, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and with a measurable time frame. Alan and I refer to the acronym SMART. We've done it more than once in our webinars, so you may be familiar with it already. Your vision also has to inspire you and be motivating. You have to be able to see it so well that you can taste it. You can already picture what it looks like when the change has happened. This picture is one that you want to keep front and center in your mind every day. If you don't know where you're going, you probably won't get there. You need to have a plan for how you'll get there. And this Yogi Bear quote I love this Yogi Bear quote because it's so true. Your plan has to be simple, it has to be realistic, it has to be specific, and you have to have thought it through. This will help you manage the distractions and the detours that might come up while you're trying to implement the change. You also need to think about and build into your plan any new skills or knowledge that you'll need and any new resources you might have to acquire. If the change is about saving better for retirement, do you need to learn about investing? Do you need an advisor? These are things you need to think about as you plan for this change. Then you need to think about the support system that will help you make the change. If it was easy to make changes, we just do them, but it's not always, so we do need support. So identify a few friends or colleagues that you can check in with on a regular basis. Maybe you have a friend who's working on their own change, or you have someone you know that will hold you accountable. And finally, you need to have a clear and simple accountability system that will help you track your actions and compare them to your intentions. This might be a daily reminder in your calendar. You might use Post-it notes that you put on your computer, or use a project tracker that has due dates. Make it something you will actually see and you will actually use. You should also include some kind of built-in reward system. Treat yourself to something nice when you stick to your plan for the week. Let your support partners know about the accountability system that you've chosen and have them ask you about it on a regular basis. It helps a lot to have someone who is supportive and someone besides yourself to whom you'll feel accountable. Just do it is a great slogan, but it doesn't usually work. With these 4 elements in place, the odds of a successful change goes way up. Let's stop and hear from you in the chat again. What do you do to increase your success when you're undertaking a change? We'll give you, it takes a few seconds for the chat to come up. So we'll give you, about 30 seconds. Share with us some of the things that have worked for you in the past. Somebody has shared weighing pros and cons. So thinking about, what are the pros and cons going into your change? That's a great one. Focus on where I want to be. So that vision piece is important. Create a routine and develop accountability. Understanding the why the change is needed. Making a realistic game plan. Good. So making a plan, focusing on the goal. Utilizing supervision to hold myself accountable if it's work related. So you can use your supervisor as accountability partner, working with a team, sharing with others, staying positive, and yeah, understanding the why again, getting my family involved in my changes for added support. Make lists and color code highlighters when I have completed each one. So yeah, again, so that's a great, what are the ways that you reward yourself? Sometimes just as simple as, being able to cross something off the list. If you're a to-do list people, there are people that really get a lot of satisfaction. The reward is crossing something off. Making a realistic plan and being consistent, staying focused on priorities, keeping in mind how miserable I was prior to the change effort. So you're right. So the vision is not being miserable anymore. So, keeping in mind where you've come from will help you, inspire you to get to where you're going. Trying to get all the facts before overreacting to change. So that's a great one as well. And we're going to talk a little bit, when Alan talks a little bit about change that has been imposed on us from other places, we'll return to that one. So thank you, everyone. I think those were really great. We have one more piece to put in place to improve your success with change, and that's building what is called change resilience. And the first key to resilience is awareness. Awareness of the barriers that hold us back, and awareness of our strengths, and the positive inspiration from our vision. By staying focused on your strengths and your vision, you'll be better able to ride the waves of change. And one way to do this is to build in regular times for self-affirmation. Repeat to yourself why you're committing to this change and what strengths and supports you have to get you there. For some of us, that may sound hokey, but taking a few minutes out of the day to remind yourself that you can see this change through, that's really important for making that change successful and for building that resilience. It is valuable to take at least a small step forward every day related to your change. And even when you have setbacks and abandon your plan for the day, taking that moment to affirm that you're still committed to the change will help you get back on track the next day. There's an old saying, the path is formed by walking on it. So make that commitment to stay on the path. Using your support network to build in time for reflection, where you are sticking to the plan and where you've been detoured, how well you're using your strengths and what more you can do to tap them more effectively. What have you tried that's been successful and how you can learn from that. Making sure you're using that support network can help you kind of reflect. So you have another person to talk these things through with. Does your change require learning a new skill? We talked about that as part of the plan. If so, following progression may help you stay on your path. So I'm going to take you through this change resilience another way. Before you took on this change, you were unconsciously incompetent. So you didn't know that you weren't able to do something because you'd never tried it. And as you began the change, you became aware of what you didn't know. And so that becomes you're consciously incompetent. And this is the most difficult stage because it's frustrating when we know that we're unable to do something. So it's important to recommit and lean on your support network when you're in that consciously incompetent phase. As you go further along and develop the skills and knowledge you need, you become consciously competent. If you focus and work hard at it, you can be successful. And this is rewarding, but it's really hard. It's a heavy lift. The good news is that as you continue on, this becomes a new habit for you. You've rewired a new path through your brain, and you can suddenly do things without much effort. Do things even without thinking about them. So you've become unconsciously competent, and it's no longer change. It's the new you. So this may sound a bit convoluted, a little bit confusing. So I want to give you a real life example. And I want you to think about before you learned how to drive. You probably thought it was pretty easy. You've been watching people do it your whole life. All the drivers you saw seemed to do it without any effort at all. At that point, you were unconsciously incompetent. You didn't know what you didn't know. You thought it was easy. And as you started learning to drive, you became aware of how complex it is. You had to step on the gas, you had to look in the rearview mirror, you had to look in the side mirrors, and you had to turn your head, and you had to turn on the change lane signal, and you had to slow down, all while you're pulled into traffic. And at the same time, you needed to be looking ahead to see where you're going. That seemed impossible and amazing and really hard to me the first time I tried it. And so I became consciously aware of just how incompetent I was. So I was consciously incompetent. When we start that driving process, when we start anything new that looked easy and is immediately hard, that's that consciously incompetent stage. But when I started to drive, I really wanted to learn to drive. So I persisted. I didn't hurt anyone, and I gradually became a competent driver. But in the beginning, I really had to think about what I was doing. I was consciously competent. I had to stay focused, and it was tiring. Over time, it's become a habit. I drive a lot, and now I can drive, talk to other people in the car, listen to the radio, glance at my GPS, and drink my coffee, all while driving. I've become unconsciously competent. I don't have to think about it much when I'm driving, and I can do it pretty easily. So this is the same thing that goes for any change that we want to undertake. It's creating a new habit. It's moving from that unconscious incompetence to that conscious, unconscious competence. It's hard to do at first, but over time it becomes easier. But that's really only if you stick with it. So how can you get started with these changes? As they say, today is the first day of the rest of your life. And resolutions are a great way to create a vision. And we talked about, resolutions we talked about already around New Year's. So we'll stick with resolutions. And so the first thing to do when you're thinking about what change you want to make is brainstorm a list of the changes that you want to make. You sit down and think about, are there a number of changes that you want to make? And then just pick one. Pick one of the resolutions, one of the changes from that list. Take that one change you want to make and build a vision. What will it be like if you're successful when making this change? Savor that moment. Post a sign about it. Keep reminding yourself about what the results or the outcomes will be if you follow through with the change you've chosen. Don't focus on the barriers. Focus on the end point, that vision of the future. Envision what life would look like after you made the change successfully. Write down a few keywords that describe the change or draw a picture of that vision. And then save the rest of your list for next year. One mistake we all tend to make is embarking on too many changes at the same time. So follow through on one resolution at a time. One change at a time is enough. What we want to do now is give you a minute to just do that. Go through this process. Brainstorm some of the changes you might have on your list, and then choose one of those changes to make. And if you want to, you can go ahead and write those changes into the chat. Remember, writing them down helps. Creating an accountability partner helps. Since these are coming just to us, the presenters, we may share some of the changes to the group, but we won't share who's making the changes. So it's still a somewhat anonymous process. There will be a couple of us who know what the changes are. The question is just think a little bit, brainstorm the changes that you might want to make and choose one. And then if you want to, if you choose to share that change with us in the chat, you can go ahead and do that. And then Alan, I think if you want to share some of the things in the chat.
Yep. So somebody wrote in, I want to think about my happiness and stop worrying about how to make others happy. It's my time. I'll second that one. Retirement later this fall. I'll second that one too. I don't believe in resolutions as my personal change is ever evolving. Okay. Losing weight, eating healthier, and incorporating exercise regimen. It's kind of two, but they're connected. So build some firm self-care appointments in my calendar. All right, great technique for a person before who wants to lose weight and incorporate exercises. Schedule them in. Move to another state. Somebody wants to do, and maybe in the works. That one has, fear of the unknown, which people said was a big one. So learning all you can about the other state where you're moving is learning about where you're going is a good thing. Hydrate more, all right. Incorporate meditation into my routine. Provide support and development for members of my community in need. Being more of a mentor. Okay, so some of you chose two. All of you have changes that sound good, that sound positive, something that you can feel good about. So once you're focused on your change, it's time to develop some kind of an action plan for how you're going to get there. You want to think about the specific steps you have to take, and then what kind of skills or knowledge might you need? What might you need to learn more about? Again, fear of the unknown. I'm moving somewhere I don't know. The more I know, the less fearful it is. What resources or assistance might you need? And then who can you tap as your support network to give you some of that resources and assistance. And the other one is, what milestones can you build in to measure your progress and hold yourself accountable? For example, one of my changes, I want to exercise more each week. So the first step would be to figure out what a good routine would be for me. The next step would be to find an exercise buddy, someone who could nag or shame me into working out regularly. Apparently that's what I need. And the next step would be to set a schedule and figure out what I could cut back on to make room for exercise. And then jump in and do it. And the final step might be to monitor my progress. And if I don't succeed, explore barriers to success. I need to learn more about exercise routines and resources in my area, and I definitely need a support network to help me get past my inertia. Milestones could be the date by which I plan to have finished my research and begun my new routine. Another milestone could be 3 weeks later to check in and see how I'm really doing. And then once again, a month or so, stop and reflect. One important key is to focus on one resolution and really work at it. If you really work at making a change, your success rate goes from 0 to 50% or more. It's hard work. Change doesn't come easy, but the goal is worth it. Then work at it. Take a minute and give this a try. We put together a handout. I'm not sure if we can get that in the link for people, but it's basically what's on this slide here. So you chose one change a minute ago that you wanted to work on. And so take a minute and think about, what are the steps you have to take? What skills or knowledge might you need? What information or abilities might you have to add on? What are the resources you need? Who can be your support network? And what milestones might you have to measure progress or hold yourself accountable? So we'll give you, again, just a minute here for you to just jot down some quick notes. We won't ask you to share all that, but we wanted you to really get started. Again, hopefully this is helping you with your inertia. And by having a well-drafted plan, we'll hope that'll get you over the fear of the unknown. You'll see where you're going and how you're going to get there and what you need to do. And then negative comments of others was the other thing on the survey that people highlighted. And again, if you have a vision that you're excited about and you have a realistic plan to get there and you have a way of measuring your progress, you can more easily ignore the comments of others, the doubters out there. Okay, so the link to the handout is in the chat if you want to see it, but it's basically those 4 questions. And somebody commented that it's helping with inertia. That's very good. Thank you. Always good to get some feedback that we're on target. So again, I'll just give you about another 15 seconds. Just jot down some quick thoughts. This is the beginning of your action plan. You'll need to take more time afterwards to work on it. Okay, so hopefully you've made a good start. You've gotten over the first inertia. You've got a plan sketched out. And after the webinar, please take some time to work on this. Today, if you can, tomorrow, if not today, but really take just a few minutes to sketch it out. And if you do, you'll be much more positioned for success. As they say, it's important to not get discouraged. So if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. It gets tiring to keep trying, which is why you need these positive affirmations that Jenny talked about and a good support system. Many people succeed on the 3rd, 4th, or even 5th serious try. Each time you try, you get a little closer to the top. It's like climbing a mountain. It's all uphill until you get there. If you quit halfway through, it's easy to slide back down to the bottom, and then you have to start all over again. But once you've made it to the top, you've made it over all the barriers, and it's all downhill from there. So take out your calendars right now and make an appointment with yourself to work on your action plan. Make a weekly or more often repeating appointment. Someone had suggested that earlier, to check in with yourself and keep working at it. Be sure you share your plan with your support network. You want people who can hold you accountable. As we mentioned at the start, there's another kind of change that is imposed on us from the outside. We didn't ask for this change. We have no control over it. We can't control how we choose to respond or adapt to that change. So we're shifting gears from the self-imposed change, the ones that we initiated, now to the ones imposed by the outside, which are often more unpleasant and often more challenging. So people who study change have identified 4 phases that people go through during a change process: denial, resistance, exploration, and commitment. We each have our own pace for navigating these phases. The key is to observe yourself during change and help yourself deal with and move through each of these stages as quickly and effectively as possible. Let's look at each of them in some detail. First one is denial. In the denial stage, we know the change is coming, but we wish it would just go away. We're too tired and stressed to deal with it, and we ignore it or pretend it isn't there. We focus on the way it's always been done and try to keep that in place. Anybody have any success with this approach? You've been able to wish away a change that's coming down the pike? Me neither. So once we accept the change is coming, typically the next phase is resistance. We recognize it's coming and we try to fight it or disrupt it. We hope if we make it difficult, the change leader will give up and go back to the old ways. As the quote says, stubbornness does have its helpful features. You always know what you're going to be thinking tomorrow, from Glenn Beeman. All right. So change is stressful. And if we could be stubborn and resistant, at least we can stay focused in one area. Not very helpful, though. So resistant reactions can include anger, blame, anxiety, grief, depression, bargaining, and even retirement. Some of us resist change because we're afraid of it. We're worried about a negative outcome. Others may resist because we don't approve of the specific change, and we think another approach is better. In some cases, we may have a good point, and we can influence the change leader. But once the change is set, then additional resistance just becomes annoying. People stuck in this stage have negative, complaining conversations with others. You know who they are. Some people may shift their resistance to bargaining with the change leader to try to get some benefit for themselves, to offset the pain of change. Again, if this works, that's great. Maybe you can get some accommodation, but once this has been discussed, then it's time to move on and work with the change. The third phase is exploration. After we work through our resistance, most people accept that the change is coming and we can't derail it, so we might as well get on board. Not everyone makes it to this stage. Some stay stuck in resistance, but they become quieter about their resistance when they see the change is moving forward anyway. Those of us who make it to exploration become engaged in brainstorming new ideas as to how to achieve or improve on the proposed change. There are always a lot of positive discussions, many questions, and sometimes healthy disagreements or even arguments. The Chinese character for crisis is made up of the characters for danger and opportunity. Each change can be a small crisis. People in the exploration change look for the opportunities each change presents to find the best way to work with the change. With all this exploration, there can be a lack of focus and follow-through. There can also be over-preparation and confusion as people study and debate the change. Working through a change is work. We have to expect some disruption as people sort it out and find out how to make it work for them. Charles Swindoll once said this another way: we're all faced with a series of great opportunities brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. So shifting our focus from what seems impossible to what might be possible is a great way to deal with barriers to change. The final stage in change is commitment. This is when you fully come to terms with the change and see the benefits it can offer you. You shift from what is this and is it good for me to how can I make this work? People in this stage focus on problem solving and planning. They move forward, fully coming to grips with the change and seeing the path ahead. Each of us can play a role in helping our coworkers move successfully through a change process. The key is holding on to a clear vision, listening carefully to our colleagues to hear their concerns and ideas, and collaboratively developing an action plan that's realistic. And then keeping communication open as we all work through the plan. We have a short video clip that's coming up that shows the 4 stages of change compressed into 2 minutes. And we're going to try a little technology switch here. So bear with us for a second. See if this works. Where's it? Here we go. All right, I got the slides back up. Okay, so we have a short video clip we're going to show in a minute that looks for the ways Joe exhibits the 4 stages. So Bill and Joe work for a financial management company that's in some trouble. And as a result, they have come up with a weekly report that the board of directors has asked for that shows what the financial picture is and the results of their new marketing efforts. They're trying to dig their way out of a hole. So Bill is in charge of producing the weekly report every Friday, and Joe is responsible for contributing a portion of it. Joe's piece is due at 2 o'clock every Thursday. And is this showing up? I'm not sure what people are seeing. Jenny, are we seeing the right slides?
We see this slide.
Slide, good, okay.
This
Thank
slide.
you.
Yeah, not the
All
video,
right.
sorry.
Yep. So anyway, Bill's in charge of the report every Friday, and Joe produces a important piece of it, and his piece is due at 2 o'clock every Thursday. Joe misses the deadline almost every week. Bill comes into Joe's office to talk about the ways Joe can change his approach so he can be more on time with the report. So as you watch the clip, look for the ways Joe exhibits denial, resistance, exploration, and commitment. And watch what Bill does to help Joe work through these stages. We're having a little technical problem, so the sound may not be great. So we hope you'll listen carefully, but basically Bill comes in, talks about the need for Joe to switch, and then Joe kind of talks about why he can't, what gets in the way. You'll see the denial, the resistance, and gradually Joe begins to come up with some ideas, and he and Bill together work through the commitment. So see if you can catch all that. I'm going to switch over to sharing the video. Okay, so
Hi, Joe. Can I talk to you? Sure. So it's about the weekly report. Your reports are always done well. Accurate, well-written, easy to scan. It would be great if you could also get them done on time.
Glad you like my report. And I know I can be a bit of a try to be on schedule.
I appreciate that, and I know you can do it. I'm concerned that trying harder won't be enough. This has become a steady pattern.
I know, sorry. Thank you.
I hope so. When your report is late, it backs me up. You know, these are my team are waiting for me to finish my part of the report so we can get the whole thing in by noon on Friday.
Sorry about that, but I'll try to be on time next week.
Joe, you say that every week, and still you're consistently late.
You know how it is. Something pops up and pulls me off the reports.
And you're right. Things often come up. What can you do to make sure the report's enough?
You feel it. And time gets steam.
Yeah, that wouldn't work. What else can you try?
Well, I could try to get the reports done first thing in the morning. That way it gives me a cushion to get the other things done.
You think that will really work?
Yes. The smaller things usually only take about an hour or so to deal with. And if I've already started the reports early enough, I have time to do it.
Well, what if some bigger things come up at the last minute?
That would be a problem.
Oh, we can do that.
Well, I'm not alone.
Isn't there anyone else that could take on the job? What happens when you're on vacation or out sick?
I'm on vacation, then Tom takes over, but that's something that we plan for in advance. If I'm out sick, well, then all hell breaks loose. But I'm not out much.
Your attendance isn't. And so is your work. If we could just find ways to guarantee your work on time, you'd be great.
Maybe I could train somebody to fill in for those small jobs that pop up, and that way I can stay focused on the reports.
Got anyone in mind?
Give me a day or two to think about it.
That's great, Joe. I think we've got a plan. You'll start the report first thing Thursday. That way you'll have a cushion in case any crises pop up.
Right. I'll come up with someone who could be my backup, and we'll figure out a plan to train them.
Great. You, Tom, and I will talk about how to work in the backup person.
So thanks for being patient.
All right, let me see if I can get this back on. All right, so hopefully most of you could hear that. Again, our apologies. We do most of our work on Zoom, and we haven't tried videos on WebEx. So anyway, hopefully as you listened, you could hear the denial in the beginning. What did Joe say that demonstrated denial? He apologized for the problem and hoped it would go away. He just said, I'll try harder. So that really denies that there's some kind of underlying problem. And then Bill stays engaged. He repeats his concern and it shows Joe that he's not leaving. It's not going to go away and denial's not going to work. And how about resistance? Did anybody see things Joe did? He's a pretty easygoing guy. He doesn't outright resist anything. Was there anything that you saw he did that showed resistance? And Jenny, you're gonna have to monitor the chat because, oh, there it is. I got it. All right, so some people didn't see the slides, some people couldn't hear. All right. All right. Well, I'll go on. So Bill says, what else can you do? And Joe said, well, I could refuse the work, but he acknowledges that his boss will get steam. So that's resistance and not a real solution. And then later when Joe talks about how he'd manage juggling small things that come up, so he kind of solved that problem. Bill said, what if big things come up? And Joe said, well, that would be a problem. He's still resisting. He's not interested in fully exploring the solution. Bill stays supportive and says, yep, that would be a problem. And what can we do about it? Kind of keeps bringing Joe back to what the issue is. How can we get you reliably to get it done? Yeah, someone said, Joe says, you know how it is. Like, there's nothing we can do, right? So someone chatted that in. Thank you. And then, so Bill just hung in there and kept repeating the problem and kind of showing Joe how each of his little steps forward was a step, but not all the way there. And we finally get to exploration. And now Joe has a couple of suggestions. He could put the small things off. And if big things come up, he could train someone for small jobs. And that would free Joe up to get the report done on time. And Bill shows his support by acknowledging the strengths of Joe's suggestions, also points out where they might fall short, and he and Joe continue to explore until they come up with a solid solution. All right. So somebody had a comment about the racial makeup of the video clip, and we have clips of Joe doing a great job. This is just one where we mixed it. So they finally get the commitment, and Joe says, give me a few days to find the backup person. They figure out how to train them. Bill summarizes the solution with some confidence and confirms the commitment. So our hope is that you would be able to use this as a facilitator in work when people are going through a change, whether you're the change leader or just a member of the team. Help people notice that they're in denial, help them work through that, see the resistance, encourage them to come into exploration. As you get through exploration, find something where there's consensus around and build commitment. So the clip is a good illustration of the 4 stages, and Jenny's going to talk more about how you can help facilitate this in the workplace.
Great, thanks. And we do have a question about what to do when you don't have somebody like that for a backup person, and we'll address that. We can talk a little bit more about that at the end. Answer some of the questions. I think that would great. So it is wonderful when you do have somebody that can they can help you move through change. So you can also serve as that person and help other people move through the change process. And the steps that you can take to facilitate collaboration and help your colleagues work through change are really the same ones that Bill took in the clip. So have a clear vision of the change itself and be clear about why it's important. Take time to fully listen to other folks' concerns and the barriers they face. Encourage them to brainstorm possible solutions and help them think through and shape them to be realistic and effective. And then celebrate small successes, acknowledge setbacks only as temporary and not as failures. So there's just setbacks. And finally, hold on to that vision and continue to encourage your team to work to climb the mountain. And I think it's, and I do think it's the same. I will actually answer that question now, which is, if you don't have somebody to be your backup person to help you work through those stages, if you can feel yourself resisting change, try and work through them yourself. Create a vision for yourself on why the impact of the change, why it might be necessary. Think about what the barriers are and begin to brainstorm around what are the things that can help you get beyond those barriers, and then celebrate your successes as you move forward, so you can have that, be your own backup person, help yourself move through the change process itself. I'm going to tell one final story about adapting to change, and some of you may have heard this before, but I think it's a good example and a great reminder about change itself. And it's a young woman is complaining to her father about how hard things are for her and the difficulties she's facing. And her father's a chef. And so he takes her to the kitchen and he fills 3 pots with water and places each on a burner and turns them on high. Soon the pots come to a boil and he places carrots, and I think I have a visual here, but that's okay. And the second he places eggs. And the last he places coffee beans, and he lets them sit and boil, and he doesn't say anything to her at all. The daughter waits impatiently. She wonders what he's doing. And then in about 20 minutes, he turns off the burners. And he fishes the carrots out and he places them in a bowl, and he pulls out the eggs and he places those in a different bowl, and he ladles the coffee into a third bowl. And then he turns to her and he says, "What do you see?" And she says, rolls her eyes, and she says, "Carrots, eggs, and coffee." He brought her closer and asked her how to feel the carrots. And she did, and she noted that they were soft. And then he asked her to take an egg and to break it. And after pulling off the shell, she saw it was a hard-boiled egg. And finally, he asked her to sip the coffee. She smiles. She's a big coffee lover, and she smells its rich aroma, and she tastes it. And she asked her father, she's okay. So I see all these things. What's your point? And he explains that each of the 3 objects have faced the same challenge. They've all boiled in water, but each thing has reacted differently. The carrot went in strong. It was hard. It was unrelenting, unbendable. But after it was subjected to the boiling water, it got softer and it was weak and mushy. The egg was fragile at the beginning, easy to break, but after its time in the boiling water, it's got hard inside. And the ground coffee beans, they were unique. After they were in the boiling water, they changed the water itself. They changed the water from pure water to brewed coffee. So he turns to his daughter and he says, "Which are you? When adversity knocks at your door, how do you respond? Are you a carrot? Are you an egg? Or are you a coffee bean?" So I want you to think a little bit about that as you leave today. Our goal is to be like the coffee bean. We don't want to become hard, but we don't also want to become soft. Instead, we want to change the environment in a way that makes it richer and more positive. So some of you may first take the carrot approach when you're faced with a change that comes your way. You might fight back against the change, and it may make you worn down. It may wear you out. Others of you may take the egg approach, starting softly and then getting beaten up and cracked by the change itself, and then getting tough and resistant. But most of us get through these stages to become the coffee bean. We get a sense of where the change is going, and we adapt our environment to help us better deal with the change, and ideally to help us find hidden opportunities the change may present for us all. So many people may be familiar with the following quote. It's actually often wrongly attributed to Charles Darwin. It was based on his work, but written by a management consultant named Leon Magnuson. And most people don't actually remember it the right way, but the actual quote is, "It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor not the most intelligent, but the one that is most responsive to change." If you can learn to master change, you'll find yourself much more relaxed and successful. So remember the Chinese character for crisis, danger and opportunity. While each change can be a small crisis, we'll hope you'll be able to find the opportunity in each change to make the most out of it. So, and remember, if nothing ever changed, there'd be no butterflies. So this is the end of our presentation. Blake is going to wrap things up for us, but then we will stay on to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, please start by typing them into the chat box. Oh, and you're
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, everyone. Jenny and Alan, especially to you guys for coordinating things today. If you have to sign off, you're welcome to, but we do still have time left over. So if you want to share any other thoughts or feedback or have any questions, this is your perfect opportunity. Please do so in the chat box. Also, join us or visit our OVS training VAP Training Center webpage for additional links to register for all the other trainings that are coming up or reference. We'll put it back in the chat box as well for you. I do want to thank Jenny Nan again today as well. As they come in, I do want to note somebody had pointed out that the video we showed depicted a black man in a negative light reacting to a white boss. So I think it's worth acknowledging that. I don't want you to feel like your comment is being lost in the ethos or we're just sweeping that under the rug. We do appreciate that feedback and we'll take that into consideration moving forward.
Okay, so far we've got a couple of thank yous. Someone said it was
So
reaffirming and informative.
Yep, here's one. How do you work with coworkers, staff who are totally resistant to change and try to spread that attitude to others?
Is that the $1 million question?
Yeah, it is the $1 million question. Alan?
Yeah, I've got $1 million. If there, the idea is to, again, start with the vision. Someone said in the beginning, the why. Why is the change happening? What are the benefits? Try to find some benefit to that person. If there are no benefits, in fact, sometimes there are changes that are just not helpful to your team, but they're helpful to the organization overall, or they're required by outside, regulators. To just share that this is what it is. We got to get through denial first. The change is happening. We can't stop it. We can all be miserable while we deal with it, or we can learn to manage it. And let's figure out how we can best get through this change with ourselves being as intact as we can. So to try to sell it if the change has real value and help them see that. If not, help them see that it's to their advantage to try to better manage the change. And bottom line is to point out to them, do they want to be the kind of person that people see as a complainer and as someone who makes things negative? That we've had a lot of negativity in our year and it's time to look to the positive. We've got to find a way through this. We can work together. Let's be on a team. How can I help you? So those kinds of things. So vision, rationale, and then just appeal to collegiality and community.
We have had a couple questions about the actual training itself for people who are late or people want to share it. I do believe that in a couple of days, not right away, it will be shared on the OVS VAP training website. Is that correct, right, Blake?
Yep, it'll get published up there on our YouTube channel. And if you attended today, we typically send a link to everyone who registered and attended as well. So stay tuned, a couple days usually.
Okay, and somebody has a suggestion. My experience is once I've made an affirmative change, I tell myself, why did I stay in the situation so long and resist the change? So that's another thing to share with the other person. If you know they've been through a change that was successful, remember we did that, we got through that, we all came through in good shape, we can do it again. So yeah, it's another great concept.
And the slides will also be on the Training Center website.
Yep, and I just shared them again in the chat.
Oh, great.
The slides and the handout, a link to both of those. But we will share them when we send our thank you, and as well, they will be on the training YouTube page.
And somebody has a great question. How do you become the coffee when life's changes are so daunting, like the loss of loved ones? And again, a good support network. I think when we suffer a loss like that, we either become the carrot or the egg. We get soft and collapse, or we get hard and angry. And those, there's the stages of grief, which are really the stages of change. And so, denial is the first part, and anger is another part. Resistance, very, very similar. The stages, actually, if you think about it. And so, you yourself have a hard time working through those stages. That's what a support network can do for you, and you can be for others. That support network, when they're denying it, it's unfair, it's horrible, why did it happen, life stinks, all the negativity people feel, is just listen. And if it's you, vent, share your denial, share your anger, you've got to go through the stages. We don't skip them. We're not saying skip the stages. So just be aware that you're in these stages and you need to take time to go through it. And if you spend time talking through that stage, you will move to the next stage. After denial, anger is a natural reaction that most of us have. And after you work through your anger, you begin to come to accept. And that's the final stage. So, and again, with mourning is to remember the good, the benefit, the beauty, the memories that were positive. And, we can't start with that, though. We have to start with denial and anger. Have to. That's what grieving is about. So, and the same is true in the workplace. You can't just jump in and say it's a great change. If somebody's unhappy, they're in denial. You can't say, let's skip over to stage 3. You have to work with them and help them through each of those stages.
So we do have a question on how you deal with an event that causes many changes at once. For example, going back into the office after working from home for over a year. So there are a lot of changes that one change may bring on a lot of other changes, because it's so the change causes things like less sleep, financial burden, less time with families and friends because of things like travel time to and from the workplace, and changing your overall schedule. So so it's one big change, but it has kind of incremental changes. And I think it's the same. You need to go through the stages. Think about how you work through those barriers that are keeping you from implementing those changes. And some of them may be around transportation and childcare, and working through those, and work through them one at a time. But sometimes because I think you're right, we did talk about, when we talk about initiating our own change, we said do one at a time. And sometimes we have a lot of changes that come on at once. So the first, I think, is to accept that there's a lot going on, and give yourself space to react to that, and really start making that plan. You going through, bringing in some of the components from both what Alan just talked about, those 4 stages that Alan just talked about, and some of the things that we talked about in the first part, which is, making a plan, creating your support network, making sure you have a support network to work with, to help you through the change process and all that it brings on with it. Alan, do you have anything you want to add there?
No, I think that was a pretty good answer. So another one was, how do you deal with an event that causes many changes at once?
That's what I just said.
Oh,
that was the one.
That one? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Those were earlier, though.
Yeah.
How do you remember to use the 4 elements for success? Any tips for people who have fluctuating lives and a history of unwanted change, disruption? Even if it's remember to schedule it. Any tips to make it easier for barriers? Remembering what learn something to overcome unconscious incompetence. So the unconscious incompetence just means you're not aware, and as soon as you try to change, you become conscious of your incompetence, and that's the first step, unpleasant step. The 4 elements, get the PDF and print out that slide and paste it up somewhere. Really, if you're trying to change the way you operate and you have a new recipe, you've got to post it where you can read it and see it. Share it with a friend and ask them to ask you, how are you doing with these 4 elements? Do you have a good vision? Have you come up with a plan? Do you have your support network? So have people talk to you about it and ask them to remind you. I find that I'm much more likely to remind somebody else of what they're trying to do than remember my own change. So having a change buddy is a great tool. There are also some questions about, do you offer a certificate or confirmation of attendance? So Rachel or Blake, do you want to?
Yeah, that's usually the email that'll come out with the link to the recording webinar and all that. It'll serve as your confirmation.
Okay, and somebody asked how do you look at the recording? There'll be a link there. You can
Yep.
you can see that.
I think those are all the questions that came to me or to all of us.
Yep. Okay, we'll stay on for another minute or so if anybody has any questions or comments. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
I've also sent through the chat a link to the session evaluation. When you click out of this event, there may be a little blue button that is trying to redirect you. That will take you right to the session evaluation. You can accept it. It is a safe link to click, but I've also shared it here.
We appreciate your feedback, so please do the evaluation. We like to always find ways to improve.
All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Special thank you to Ginny and Nicole for driving the ship too a little bit as well. And we'll hopefully see you guys at our next webinar. If not, check out some of the other training opportunities on our webpage and we'll stay in touch. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And Nina, you are able to stop captioning at this time.
Oh my God, a bird just flew in here, so give me a
Oh,
second.
no.
We left the back door open for the dog. Uh-oh.